So to start with, we are going to go through just a brief PowerPoint presentation covering the top considerations to consider kicking that paper habit, and then we're going to dive in and spend most of our time within the live software. So overwhelmingly, the #1 reason to consider kicking that paper habit is to really help drive efficiencies across your operations. And we do that by allowing, wait, hold on, I just wanted to make sure I am sharing my screen. I started a presentation once and I realized my screen wasn't being shared. Okay, good. It's being shared. So anyway, driving efficiency across your operations. We do that because we really help eliminate the 20 to 30% of your day that's typically spent filing, searching, retrieving information. 1 of every 10 documents is either lost or misfiled. So that tells us we spend a lot of time looking for information that's not readily available. And with PaperSave, all that information is really just a click away from within your Dynamics user interface. So you don't even really need to leave in order to retrieve documents that are typically stored right in that filing cabinet. And with that, you can help improve customer service. You can help reduce some of that stress and anxiety around that audit preparation time because you have different ways of pulling groups of documents. So a lot of our clients will pull a group of documents just by the Smart List integration. So if you create a Smart List around that your auditor's looking for, within a couple clicks you can pull all of those supporting documents to that sample as well. So there are lots of cost considerations with the way that we manage paper-based information. On average, it costs $20 to file a document, $120 to find a lost or misfiled document, and $220 to replace a lost document. And when we think about how much does it cost to fill up one of those 4-drawer lateral file cabinets year after year, costs approximately $25,000. So reason #2 to consider kicking that paper habit is to help streamline and automate paper-based processes. We're going to help automate that matching process. So let's say after a check run, right, we take that check stub and we match the supporting document and then we put in that filing cabinet. Well, PaperSave is going to automate the 2- and the 3-way matching for you based on those relationships that exist within Dynamics GP. We're also going to help streamline that approval process because now you're going to have insight to where all documents are in your process. You're no longer having to guess, especially when those vendors call inquiring about payment and you don't even know what they're talking about. So it's going to route those documents electronically, sending out email alerts to those approvers, allowing them to click a link to view that content and approve it or reject it inside of PaperSave. It's also going to help automate that filing process for you. So PaperSave has 11 different ways of capturing documents. Some of them are really geared more or less towards really high volume, like your procurement process. And with PaperSave, it's going to file that document as that transaction gets created inside of Dynamics. Now, for some of y'all who may be looking for a little bit higher end level of automation, there's also an Ocr Engine that is an option with PaperSave, and that's going to actually automate the capture of data off of the document to eliminate those keystrokes. So PaperSave will read that document, pull off vital information like vendor, date, dollar amount, invoice number, invoice date, maybe use purchase order, so it's also going to do the purchase order side as well, including any line item detail that may be required based on your process. Reason #3 to kick that paper habit is to really allow people to connect and collaborate with each other. We're going to connect people from remote offices or home offices to processes with the workflow. We're also going to connect them to information. And information, whether they need to retrieve it on demand, so instead of having to pick up the phone and call the finance department, ask them to copy something and send it to them, or it's also going to allow them to participate and add content into the workflow. So if you have multiple locations and you might incur shipping costs, maybe courier, FedEx, UPS, or even if you're scanning and trying to route documents then PaperSave can help control those costs and then also eliminate any transportation delays in getting the document from one location to the home office for processing. So the obvious starting point when we think about a paperless environment is accounts payable, and that's primarily because it's riddled with overhead costs and it's a very paper-based, intensive process. I mean, there's the cost to maintain the filing cabinet, the cost to file the document, the cost to search and retrieve it. If you have multiple locations, you've got the transportation costs. There's cost involved with fielding those vendor inquiries when things aren't paid in a timely fashion. And really, when we think about it, your entire accounts payable process is really overhead. So with PaperSave, what we'll see today is the ability to eliminate some of that data entry, to automate that filing, and that's going to allow you to reduce your monthly close cycle. But there are lots of other areas for consideration because, you know, we don't want just one process to go paperless. We want to make sure we're storing all of our content consistently. So we have financial considerations, right? What are we going to do with those journal entry backups, those bank statements, petty cash receipts, investment statements? What are we going to do with those financial reports that we produce? On the sales side, you know, we've got contracts, we've got customer purchase orders, we've got shipping documents, cash receipts. On the HR side, you know, we've got a lot of documents around employee records, right? I-9s and W-4s and benefit renewal forms, reviews, certifications. And there's other areas as well around legal and marketing and so forth. So with PaperSave, we don't just focus on accounts payable. We really have a solution that can work across your operations. But to start with, we will dive into that accounts payable area and before we evaluate those others. So it all starts with capturing the documents. Now the nice thing with the capture in PaperSave is you've probably noticed an uptick in the number of invoices that your vendors and suppliers are sending you electronically, right? So it's probably coming into an email box. Well, PaperSave can monitor email accounts and bring those documents into the process automatically. So you don't have to print them out. We don't even have to handle them. They're immediately upon receipt accounted for within the workflow environment. Now, for those documents that come to us in paper form, we can scan them and capture them into the system. So no worries there. Still can get that paper in. Now the next step in the sample workflow is extraction. Now this is that Ocr engine that I had mentioned. We are going to extract data off of the document to help alleviate the data entry to create that transaction. We have approvals, right? So once it goes through the extraction engine, it goes out for the approvers. The managers, you know, you might have 3 or 4 different tiers of approvals. Maybe it's just a single tier. But the document is going to be treated consistently based on your business rule around the approval process. So if an invoice is over a certain dollar amount, right, it's automatically going to be escalated to that next level of reviewer. That integration is going to take all of that data that's been extracted off of the document, as well as any additional data that's been added to the process, and it's going to create the transaction inside the system. It's going to associate or file that document, and then as soon as those checks are cut, it is going to do that matching process for you. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit about that process. Right, so here's just a simple screenshot from our management console where the workflows get configured. You'll notice every step in this sample process is represented as a block. Okay, so here I have a review step, I have a director review step, and I even have a vice president review step. Now, if I drill down into one of these steps, you can see a decision point in that workflow step, right? So it's saying, hey, if this document is within that manager's approval threshold, allow them to approve it, right, and send it to data entry for it to be created inside a GP. If it's over that threshold, still going to allow them to review it, but it's going to send it then to the next step of the process. So in that case, that next step could be that director review or that vice president level review or whatever's next. Now, we have different roles within the workflow. Okay, so one role could be that scan, right? I could be just the front desk person or the mailroom person who says, oh, these are invoices. I need to scan them into the system. Okay, that's my limited exposure. We also monitor those email accounts. Users can also electronically insert documents into the process using Office and Outlook tools. We also have those approvers. So those approvers are going to interact with the system through email alerts, letting them know that documents are out there that need their review. They can approve documents from mobile devices and tablets, as well as just pure browser. So we are already there. We have web clients and we have web approval methods for easy deployment. Now, the process managers are the ones who are going to be able to address bottlenecks. They're going to be able to look at the workflow, reroute documents, search for things when vendors call, and you can also even have automated escalation rules in the workflow to automatically escalate a document if there's no action on that invoice, let's say, right? You can automatically kick it up to another approver or another level of reviewer. So with that being said, let's dive into the application, okay? So let's talk first about that capture. I'm the front desk person, or I'm in the mailroom, and I've got a series of invoices that have just been received today, right? So I've got the stack. I'm going to drop it in my little scanner. I can use a multifunctional device. I can also use a network scanner or a desktop scanner, and I am going to scan it into the system. Okay, so that's how we're capturing the documents. Now with the automation engine, what's nice is you don't even have to separate those documents. You don't have to put cover sheets in between them or anything like that. PaperSave is going to do that automatically for you. Now, some people do like little desktop scanners because they can actually see these invoices, right, before they save them to the system. Okay, so what that's going to do is just save these invoices right into PaperSave to a folder that we're monitoring. Now, as soon as those documents hit that folder, PaperSave is going to bring them into the next step of that process. Now, that next step, if we think back to that quick kind of process, is this automation. And here, let me go ahead and park this batch of documents, and I'm just going to bring in the next stack. Okay. Now, this automation is going to bring in an electronic stack of documents and extract data off of them. Now, what's nice with this automation engine is I'm only having to deal with those exceptions. Okay, so if information was captured off the document successfully, there are no low confidence characters, it has automatically gone through this tool into the hands of my approvers without me having to touch the document. Okay, so think about the powerful aspect of that. If you receive documents in electronically, we don't have to touch them to get them into the system, right, because we'll monitor that email account. If it's a good document and it's clean and it's captured everything successfully, it's already in my hands of the approvers before I even have to touch it. Okay, so now we have those exceptions, and that's what we're going to deal with here within this verification station. Now, what we're looking at over here on the left side of the screen is what we refer to as a profile. Profile is data that you want extracted off of one vendor invoice to another. Okay, now the positions may be very different, but the types of fields you want extracted are the same. Okay, so if I click through and look at these different formats, you can see that information's all over the place. Now these are exceptions, so we can come and we can hit F7. F7 on my keyboard is going to bring up any of those low confidence characters for me. Now I have my low confidence characters threshold set very high, so it's going to bring any little inconsistency to me. This is a zoomed in portion of the document, from what's behind this window. And then this top bar is actually what's been captured. So it is in fact a slash or dash, so we can go ahead and confirm that. It is in fact a comma, so we can go ahead and confirm that. Right, so now we've addressed those low confidence characters. Now F8 is going to bring to my attention any information that is missing that we have said is required. Okay, so if I come over here, I have said that vendor phones are required because that may be one of those values that we use to line up or associate the vendor data, right, that we capture off of this invoice with a record inside of GP. And it's saying that phone number is missing, but you also see as I scroll down, you can see that vendor ID and that remittance address that's automatically captured. So it actually did find that vendor record inside of GP. So we can go ahead and say, yep, you know what, it all looks good. I'm going to go ahead and accept that with that warning. Now here you'll notice it's missing invoice date. And if I look over here on the right, we can capture that date by just drawing a box around it. And now you'll notice that this funky alphanumeric date is actually translated to be a proper date with inside of the proper date formatting for GP, right? Because it's looking for all numeric, so 224. And once I've done that, I can go ahead and send this over and into the workflow. So we've just dealt with the 3 exceptions, right? So in summary, exceptions come to us in low confidence characters or also missing information that we said at the beginning of the process is required. Now, if the system had not seen, let's say, Infosys before, it wouldn't know where to pick up all of those fields. But it might, because the system comes with predefined definitions to help boost that level of automation. Okay, but let's say this is kind of a real funky format, invoice, a little bit more of a custom format. So we can actually train the system on where to find that information. So what we're doing is we are pointing and clicking, and you can see as I do that how the data gets translated over here on the left-hand side. Invoice amount, so I can scroll down, grab that amount. Whoops, let me do that again. Invoice date, right, come back up here, grab that date, and any other variables that are required. Okay, so now what we've done is we've just trained the system on where to find that data going forward. So now I can hit Control-N, and you can see how PaperSave has now learned that document for you. Okay, so it's learned that formatting for you so that next time it sees it, knows exactly where to find those fields. Okay, so now the documents go off into the workflow. So workflow is that next type of user that's going to be able to interact with these documents. Workflow users, as I mentioned, are going to get email alerts. So here's an example of an email alert that goes out on a frequency that you get to define. So it's telling me I've got 3 invoices out there, and if I'm ready to review those documents, I can come, click that link, and then PaperSave is going to take me into the workflow. Now, if I am not a Dynamics user, which is typically the case, it is still a single sign-on because it knows who I'm logged into the network as, right? It knows my username is who I'm logged in. If I am on a mobile device, it will challenge me for my username and my password, right? So it can authenticate me and take me into the workflow, into those documents that are assigned to me. So here within the workflow area, I can see those documents. I can see where the documents come from, right? I can see that's gone through one level of reviewer already, and it's gone from that manager review level to that director review level, And that level was completed, oh, look, earlier today, right, 9:20, or excuse me, at 8:41 this morning, it was Tammy Bauer who approved it and sent it up to my level of review. Now, all that data that was extracted off the document is over here to the right side of the screen under that profile. Now, sometimes approvers need to populate additional pieces of information, such as profile or GL distribution. So if I'm responsible for coding this invoice, right, I don't know my account number, but I do know I'm looking for my telephone account. Okay, great, here are my accounts, and let me go ahead and code this invoice accordingly. And I can keep adding rows as needed, right? So if I do multi-line distribution, it's just going to continue to add those rows for me. Okay? Now, this piece of information may be vital to your process, right? Whereas we don't want it to get to AP and AP says, oh, they didn't populate the distribution, so now I've got to send it back, right? And that just takes time. So with workflow, we can make these fields required at any step of the process. So here I can hit approve or reject, right? It goes to the next step of the process as soon as all of those checks and balances are done. Right, so here, approve, it's going to look back at that process map. So if it exceeds my threshold, and it's going to automatically send it up to that next tier of review or approver. Okay. Now, if we think back to that process map, the next step after all of the reviews are given, the next step is for the system to create the transaction. So I've popped over here to what I refer to as accounts payable step, and it's going to show me all of those documents that have fully been satisfied for all of those approval steps and all of that data that you require from the extraction engine and those approvers. Right? We have all of that data here in the profile. Now, if I'm the accounts payable person, all I need to do is just maybe look at that data and go submit. Now, what submit does is it takes this data, creates a transaction inside a GP or SL or your ERP system, and it is going to file that document, right? Submit, and it does it in real time. Okay, so no longer am I having to key in all that data, right? We've extracted it. Maybe some users have added to it, and then we push the button and it creates that record. So if I flip over here into GP, and let's pop over to purchasing, we can go into those transactions that we just created. Okay, so those were going right into a batch. Here's the transaction I just created. Here's that document, right? So I can click that link, and then PaperSave pops open that document for me. Okay, so if we go forward to the next, right? Once again, PaperSave notifies me that documents exist. I can click that link, and now I'm looking at that document. Now, you'll also notice as I hit that submit button, right, it now tracks who submitted it, the date and time that action was done, and the user who performed that action. Okay, so it is that running audit trail around the life of that document. Okay, so we've extracted data, we've automated that approval process, we have created that record in GP by using a combination of information that we gathered from the receipt of the document through the end of that approval process. Okay, so that's what a highly automated workflow solution looks like. Now let me go back here to workflow just for a moment, because I want to show you a couple things that you can do in here. One is if you wanted to take a look at all the documents sitting out there across all of your reviewers' hands, right? I'm in here as a super user, so I can see what belongs to everybody, right? So here I can see I've got 202 documents out there in the workflow. If I want to see what's sitting in Sharad's hands, right, I can come and filter, and I can see out of those 202 invoices, right, he's only got 2. If I get a phone call from, let's say, a vendor, and they wanted, to say, hey, where's the status of this invoice? I can come and say, oh, show me all my Fujitsu invoices. Oh, and here's this invoice that they were questioning. So if I want to move it from one approver to another, I could do that. So I know that Sharad right now owns this document, right? I also can see that here within the history. But maybe I want to reassign this over to Holly. So I can filter on this list of all of my approvers. Right, there's Holly. And now that document is owned by Holly. Right, so now if we filter, again, and let's say we want to come back over here. Here's that Fujitsu. So now you can see, right, it's tracked that owner change. So you have basically full insight to what is going on within your process. So when a vendor calls, you can get it right back to that document. You can even redirect it. Now, users can also mark themselves as out of the office. So here, if I'm going to be out of the office on business leave or vacation through the 5th of October, right, I can set that as an owner change. And I can say, hey, from now until the 5th, go ahead and select, let's say, Anna as my delegate. So she's going to approve all of those invoices during my absence. And it's automatically going to track that and route the document and notate it that it was moved by her out of office. The other thing you can do through here is you'll notice this export. So you've got 202 items there. Right? Maybe you're trying to close your month and look at accruals. Here we can say, oh, go ahead and export this data for me. Right? It takes all of that data in that grid and exports it. Now you can also see over here in column A, there's a hyperlink. So at any point in time, if I save this and associate it with that accrual entry using my Office integration, and at any point in time, if I want to take a look at this invoice for Industry Business Solutions, I could do that, right? Because it's going to allow me to click on that hyperlink, and it's going to pull that document up for me automatically. Okay, so that's a little bit about the workflow. So let's pop over here back into GP. And let's take a look then at what happens after you do a check run. So there's associations that get created on actions. I come to, let's say, Fujitsu, and let me scroll down to a payment. Right here it's telling me documents exist related to payment 520. If I click that link, right, we can see a copy of that check. But we also can see that there were 3 invoices paid by that check. Right? And we can see that same information here under Apply. Well, if I want to look at those supporting documents as well, chances are I don't want to have to go to those 3 individual transactions to look for them. I can come here to Additional, and I can show associated documents. And this is going to show me that payment document and all of those documents related to those invoices that were paid by this check. Right? So here I can see, invoice 1, you see it's voucher related to voucher 485. This one's related to 487. And this one's related to record 488. Okay, so what it's done is it's automatically matched those documents for me based on the relationships that you see with inside of GP. So if I am doing, oops, I did not mean to shut down GP here. Let me go back in. But if I wanted to go to one of those vouchers and open up that voucher, I could do that as well, okay? And I can still get to that check because it's a two-way relationship. Okay, so let's go back real quick and look at that other side. So here under transaction entry, let's pull up Fujitsu, and here let's open up this voucher, okay? Or here, I think it was this one. Okay, so here, let's go to additional and show associated documents. Right, so here we're on that invoice, and now, right, we can see that payables transaction document, that payment. We also could see a copy of the contract if we wanted to right through here. Okay, so it associates and it creates these extended relationships as well. Now, beyond that drill down, which is great, right? We've now married up that filing cabinet with the source records or transactions. We can get down to a group of documents, and we can do that two different ways. One way is through the smart list. So if I come here to, let's say, run a smart list, whether it's one that you've already created or one that you're creating, right? It doesn't matter to PaperSave the criteria, right? That's all based on what you're looking for. Now, GP is going to show me those results, and you can go to Show Documents from Query. And what that's going to do is that's going to show me all of those supporting documents in that smart list result. So we essentially just pulled 160 documents in a matter of about 3 clicks. And you can see that every document is represented as a row, right? The columns of information help identify what record or transaction that document's related to. So if I wanted to open up this group of documents, I could do that, right? And then I can scroll through these documents as well. You know, one after the other after the other. Or I also have the capability to search or filter, or we saw that Excel feature. Right, we could do the same thing here. So if our auditors came in and they were looking for a specific group of documents, maybe based on, you know, what was coded to a certain GL account or a range, or maybe any transaction over a certain dollar amount, you know, here we can create that smart list. Within a click, show those supporting documents. Another click, we can take this right out to Excel and give this to our auditor with temporary view-only rights into PaperSave. And that way, if they want to take a look at, you know, this invoice for Fujitsu or Embroid Me, or, you know, whatever the case might be, they could click on that hyperlink, and then it's going to pull that supporting document for them. Okay, so that is the smart list. So what's powerful there is once a document goes in the system, it is not just related with that record from a drill down perspective, but because of the smart list, you can pull documents out of the system very, very quickly, very efficiently. Next up, let's take a look at another way that we can search and retrieve documents. And that is this Search Documents feature that's down here in my system tray. So if I want to search documents, maybe I want to pull out all my contracts or all my W-9 forms. I could come in and I could type in W-9, right, click Go, and now it's searching through my database based on my security rights, and it's going to show me all of those documents that I have out there. Okay, so here if I say, oh, just filter on vendor records, now you can see all of my vendor records specifically that have W-9 forms on them. Now in that case, we searched on this profile information. Right, so anytime that you need to pull a group of documents based on maybe document type, or even if you want to sort or filter, you could do that in the system because these profile fields are user-defined. Okay, and that allows you to pull groups of documents based on document-driven information here inside the page search. So very simple. I'm sure everybody knows how to use Google or Bing or a search engine. This basically works the exact same way. Another way that we can pull documents is by content, information that appears within the body of the document. So here if we say, gosh, show me all of those documents that have a phrase or value, numeric value, alpha value, right? We could do that. So now based on my rights, I am seeing that I've got documents in there for journal entries, for project, for customer, for vendor, for payables. Well, if I want to filter just for those that are employees, right, you can see I've got 2 certifications in there, one for Brenda and one for Angela. And I can say, oh, I'm looking for Angela's. Okay, so not only did we pull documents out based on those values, but we could filter through there as well. But now you'll notice PaperSave is highlighting where those values appear within the body of the document. Okay, so it kind of takes a lot of that guesswork out of it. And you'll notice it doesn't matter where it appears, right, as long as it finds it, it's going to bring that forward for you. Okay. So far we have covered a lot of information. Couple other things that I'd like to show you just so that you get a feel of PaperSave beyond the world of just your AP and your workflow. Other capture methods. Let's say we got a vendor's W-9 form in. Okay, and we wanted to add it into the system. Well, I could have just created this record. I could open it up, right, and I could come to additional, just like we saw thus far, and we can add a document. Okay, now adding a document is going to pop open this Add a Document screen, and you can see how we grabbed all that record information. Now we can profile that document. So if I just got that W-9 form in, I can hit W-9, right? And how do we usually get W-9 forms in? Well, today a lot of them come electronically via email. So I can come, grab that W-9 form, drag and drop it right into the screen. But I also could attach a file. So if I had that W-9 form out here somewhere, right, I could come and sort or filter or search and pull that document into the system. I thought I had one out there. I only see the I-9, but anyway, I'll just grab this document. But you can see how you can bring that right into the system. Okay. Now, if you wanted to also be able to, let's say, add a document to a sales order, or to a financial, transaction, you could do that as well, right? So here, just in the interest of time, I'll open up a record that's already there. If I want to add a document to this, maybe I just got done creating it, I could come to additional, just like we saw before, and I can add document, okay? So you can drag and drop. We can attach a file, right? So if you had a spreadsheet you were working on, you could browse out and attach it. I also have 2 different scanning options for those supporting documents that are paper. Scan Now will call up my little desktop scanner that I have here connected to my computer, and you'll note it's converting it to a PDF file for me. So now it's going to be saved as a PDF file, and it also becomes searchable, right? So here's that document. But if I have a piece of paper in my hand and I don't have a desktop scanner because I don't necessarily deal that much with paper, no worries. I can still produce a scan later cover sheet. Okay, now what this will do is you'll notice when I hit Scan Now, it calls up my scanner window. This is calling up my printer window. And the reason why is because it's going to print a barcoded cover sheet for me. Okay, so we're going to save this cover sheet right to my desktop. And then we'll open here in a second. There we go. And this cover sheet is what is going to be used when I scan it to associate it back to this record, this journal entry, automatically. Okay, so this barcode is a pointer. So when we scan it in a stack, it is going to capture those documents out of that folder that we're monitoring. It's going to bring those documents in the system, it's going to separate them, and it's going to associate them. Okay, we know what company it's for, just in case you have multiple companies. We know the record type. We know the specific record. And any of those user-defined profile fields that were completed is now populated that information. So lots of different ways that you can use PaperSave across volume processes, as well as, processes where, aren't necessarily as formal or maybe not as high a volume, but you still need to make sure that you capture those supporting documents. So when your audit comes, you have all of that information stored consistently and right at your fingertips. Well, we have clearly covered a lot today. So let me bring up this last slide, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Allie. So really, when you think about a paperless environment, think about efficiency and collaboration and streamlining your processes, because that's really what you're going to get within a paperless environment. And all of those touch on so many different areas like cost reduction. There's cost reduction because you're becoming more efficient. There's cost reduction because you're lowering the cost to produce an invoice, eliminating those late charges. Cost reduction because you're improving customer services. Cost reduction because you're not photocopying documents at the same pace that we were before, which ironically industry averages tell us that a document gets reproduced 19 times in its life. So lots of cost reduction there. Cost reduction because we can reclaim office space, help eliminate off-site storage space. And most importantly, also something that people don't necessarily think about a whole lot is disaster recovery. So all of your documents are now backed up just like the transactions, that data in your GP database. So if anything ever happens, you have complete control over resuming business operations because you have all of that information available to you. Well, thank you very much for your time today. Hoping you found this session informative.